We are back on Fight News Now Live. John Pollock, John Ramdeen, and All-American Robin Black is with us. Man, the funny part is, if you were at the Smoothie King Center tonight, Robin, with a beer in one hand, a beer in the other, the New Orleans balanced diet, you would fit right in.
It's got eagles on it.
What doesn't? What doesn't south of the border? Here is our man that is going to make you some money tonight. Down at the Smoothie King Center, Gabe, this is a tough card to make some picks on, but I know you're going to make some bold statements.
Well, that's right. Nothing but bold statements on the program, just like Robin's shirt this evening.
Make it loud, make it proud.
You know what? I sat next to a couple of people in Vegas at Palace Station about 4:30 a.m. playing blackjack, but they were much fatter than Robin was. And speaking of which, Smoothie Center, my ass. This is New Orleans. Listen, unless you're putting bourbon and bacon in these smoothies there, you're going to get shot unless you give them a nice ice cold beer. All right, let's try to pick some winners here. I'm not going to dance around. We're going to the Bayou. Let's be bold. We're going to give you some picks for the main card here in the main event. Dan Henderson, we all know he's a legend, man. This guy's one of the best of all time. You know, I don't want to say anything bad about him, but he's only won one time in the last 6 fights. He's really only beaten Shogun in the last, 4 years or something like that, to be honest. The problem is, Tim Boetsch, he's not very good, right? You know, this kind of reminds me of Luke Barnett and Mark Munoz a little bit, but Luke Barnett really isn't very good. I think Tim Boetsch can actually win this fight. I hate to say that it's almost value, laying 80 or 90 cents on the dollar, but it almost is. I think Tim Boetsch is going to be victorious, and if he isn't, you're going to be with Luke Barnett looking for a job, Tim. All right, let's move on. Ben Rothwell, always dangerous betting on a heavyweight fight. That's why I got to take the underdog here. I like Rothwell's experience. I like his versatility. I think he's a bit more well-rounded than Matt Mitrione is. Mitrione's a light guy on his feet, but he racks up, he beats tomato cans. Let's call it out for what it is. I don't want to say everybody sucks, but everybody sucks. So, you know, Mitrione hasn't beaten a lot of great dudes. I'm going to take a shot, 60 cents on the dollar. Dustin Poirier. Remember when Dustin Poirier was like a future contender for the championship? And I thought the guy was a badass, scary dude, man, from the Bayou. He was humbled. But you know what? I think he's learned his lesson. He's been humbled. He's had a good camp. He's ready for this fight. He's fighting in his backyard. I'm a little bit concerned that he gets caught. And potentially gets caught, but ultimately I think Poirier grinds out a decision victory in his backyard, and we'll wrap it up with another heavyweight tilt and a local LSU Tiger, national champion LSU Tiger, Sean Jordan taking on Derek Lewis. I like Sean Jordan. Lewis is a tough dude, and if he hits you, you're in a lot of trouble. The fight's a pick 'em, and Jordan's fought a lot of bigger dudes, and Lewis isn't very athletic. I like Jordan to win this fight, guys.
Yeah, I think especially if this one gets out of the first round. I mean, Derek Lewis, a ton of power, but I question how he'll fare against Jordan if we're looking at a potential third round between these two. I just think Jordan, the better condition of the two heavyweights.
He is, and he's a better athlete,
yeah.
But Lewis, he's bigger, stronger. Just put this guy up against the cage and minimize the damage.
Hey, man, you just can't bet money on heavyweights. That's just crazy. You might as well bet on a car accident, bet on which car survives better.
Well, let's take a look at what the three of us are betting on come tonight, and we look at our picks there. Man, I'm the only one going with Tim Boetsch, Ramdeen, and Robin, picking Dan Henderson to get the victory, and then split as well with Matt Mitrione and Ben Rothwell, and we go down the rest here. An interesting fight there with Francisco Rivera and Alex Caceres. Robin not putting any pick down for that particular fight.
That one is literally 50-50. If Caceres stays on the outside, he wins. If Rivera gets into trading distance on the inside, he wins. Flip a coin on that one.
Also, Thiago Tavares, he is going to be in action as well. In featherweight action, all of us are going with Thiago Tavares. I think that you look at that main event, I mean, many different ways it can go, and Dan Henderson, this is going to be a referendum, I feel, on his career. Tim Boetsch is a fighter that Dan Henderson of 2 years ago beats, I think, without any question. I don't think that this would even be competitive.
The thing is, what happens if Dan Henderson comes out and in the first 2 rounds knocks out Tim Boetsch? Does that change anything? Right now, a lot of people are saying Dan Henderson's got to win this fight, or who knows, he could be getting his walking papers. It really depends on what type of performance Dan Henderson has. If he can come and dominate Tim Boetsch and prove that he still is one of the top guys at 185 pounds, I think he'll change a lot of people's minds. But if he looks tired and Tim Boetsch is able to manhandle him, then who knows?
Well, if you guys learned anything from America, the greatest hits of Dan Henderson, it's that Henderson's a patriot and a great American.
All right, we've got a ton of fights coming your way from the Smoothie King Center, beginning with all of the preliminary fights. You don't have to go anywhere because 4 prelim fights all coming your way here on Fight Network. For Robin, John, I am John Pollock. Enjoy all the fights from New Orleans.